So to start, instead of opening an image, we're actually going to go to new image. So we want to start by creating a new file here. And I saw a few people using the Photoshop Online not doing this. And so I specifically want to show this. So we want to go to new document. It looks a little bit different online, but it's somewhat similar. You want to pick a document size. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to pick just this default one. But again, the image size doesn't matter too much. Once we have this open, we have a blank canvas. And so before we bring in our image that we're going to work on today, I want to just talk a little bit about the interface. And so in a lot of software, especially Photoshop, SketchUp that we were just using, you'll see that the interface is pretty consistent with those different softwares. So over on the side here, we have this kind of toolbar of different elements. Down here we have layers open, we have this color section open, and this can obviously change to show more information, different information, and all that. On the left-hand side, we have this toolbar. So these are all of our different functions: move, lasso, and a few different things. So paint, bucket, there's lots of stuff here. And then at the top, we have our file area. So obviously pretty common in most softwares. You can go to new, we can do scaling. We'll use a few of these in a few minutes. I won't go over too much right now, but there's a bunch of functions up there that we can obviously use. And then this next kind of area down is our kind of options area. And so this will change to respond to whatever tool you're using. So depending on the tool, it will have different settings and different functions that would be appropriate. So let's get started here. So you have that image that you downloaded from online. And so the one thing that I did very specifically is I actually created a new blank file here. And so what I would like to do is I would like to copy that image in. So I'm just going to grab my image here, and I'm actually just going to drag it in. It should let us Control C, Control V, maybe. No, it doesn't want to do that. You should be able to Control Paste. I'm copying it in a weird way. We can also just drag our image in like this. And when you drag or paste an image in, sometimes it will have, you can see I have these controls to adjust the image. And so what I need to do down here is I need to hit done, or I can hit the enter button on my keyboard to finish that image. So essentially now what I've done is I've brought my image into a blank canvas. So don't open the image on Photoshop Online. Don't open the image on Photoshop. Create a new blank canvas and copy that image in. And I think that's a good thing to do, because it often will just circumvent some issues, and you obviously just have a fresh place to start. And then the other thing about that is you can obviously control the canvas size. So we're doing 1890 by 1260 is our, actually that's our image, I think there. And what is this? Our canvas size is just a random size, but I think it's actually based on a physical size, so like a width and length in inches or in millimeters. So that's why this pixel number is different. So we're 2128 by 1419. Not that that matters a whole lot. So the one thing you'll see now that I've copied my image in is actually I have two layers here. I have my background layer and I have my image layer. And so we don't really need the background layer, so I can go ahead and I can actually right click and I can actually delete this layer. And sometimes if you have a lock symbol here, it may or may not allow you to unlock that or delete it with it being locked. It may. And so I'll just go here and I'll click unlock, and then we can hit delete, and that will delete that that image there. So now that we have the image there, we want to start working with it. All right, so now that we have this image in here, let's start to manipulate it. I think the first thing you're going to see right away is we actually have some white space at the top and bottom, or if you copy and paste your image in, it may be too big or too small. And so if we go up here to the edit button, we actually have a button here called transform. So we can do scale or whatever. And so we can then scale the image. So when you grab these corners, it will keep the scale of the image, or the aspect ratio of the image consistent. If I hold the shift button, you can see I can actually distort this image, right? And then as soon as I let go of this shift button, my image goes back to being scaled appropriately to the aspect ratio. If I actually hold the Alt button here, I think it's the Alt button. Yeah, the Alt button will actually scale the image in both directions at the same time. So scale horizontally and vertically. And basically, once you kind of got that figured out, you want to get your image to be filling your page. So something like that. And then once you're done this process, we can hit the Enter button. Before I hit Enter, I just want to show you can rotate images and stuff in here as well. So what I did is I kind of moved my mouse to the outside of the image, and it kind of shows the rotation tool. And so when my mouse is in the middle, we can move. When my mouse is on the points, the corners, we can then scale, and then when the mouse is on the outside, it's rotate. So those are kind of the various functions within this transform. It's going to be a very effective tool. I think you'll probably use the transform probably more than a lot of tools, because it's just something you'll probably do with every image you bring in. And with transform, I'm not going to really go over it, but you can also do skew, distort, perspective. So there's a lot of ways to distort an image. Warp, for example, I could actually drag down one corner only, but it'll maintain the other two corners. So it'll almost like squish the image from one corner down. So it just, there's ways to make the image do different things, and whatever you want to do, I guess it's very dependent on that. So the next thing I would like to do is I want to start manipulating this image. So the first thing I think comes to mind is that sky is just too blue, and we're obviously in October now, so maybe we should do something Halloween themed. I don't know why, but that's what I did in my previous class, so I'm gonna continue with that that theme. And to be frank, I mean, it probably won't work very well, but I'll show it anyways. And so when we bring in images, the first thing you're gonna see down here on our layer is there's this little like icon over top of the image. It's a little bit hard to see, but you can see down here there's some sort of icon on top of that. And basically, that's kind of telling me that this image is locked from editing. And so what I would like to do is I'm going to right click on this image. And the first thing I want to do is I want to rasterize that image. And so rasterizing the image just kind of gives us the ability to edit that image and manipulate it. And so I'm going to click rasterize. Now that we have that, we can see that icon is gone off that image, and we can edit it. And so the first thing what I want to do is I want to talk about selection and kind of removing the sky and doing stuff like that. So if we go up here, I think what you'll see is this button. It looks like a square with a pointer. And so this is the object selection button, and I did click it, it looks like. And if we click and hold, we can go down to the magic wand tool. And so the magic wand tool is a pretty simple tool, and it's honestly, the object selection tool is a newer tool because magic wand basically uses color. The object selection tool kind of uses AI to start selecting things. It's trying to identify what it's actually seeing and using that tool to grab things. But this magic wand tool very much works like color. So if I wanted to grab the sky, you'll see kind of how sensitive it is here. When I click on the sky there, it's actually not selecting all of the sky because there's actually this part over here that you can see it starts to kind of like fade a little bit more white here. And so this part over here is not selected. And so in order to select that part, I'm actually just going to do this wrong intentionally, but if I click this other part, it's going to deselect a different part of the image. So it's kind of grabbing a different range of blue. But if I want to select the whole thing together, the one cool thing, I didn't mean to select that. The one cool thing is we can hold the shift button on the keyboard while we select this, and if I click this bottom part, it's going to add that other blue. So it's taking the lighter blue from the bottom and adding it to the darker blue to the top, and it's going to select the whole thing. And so now that we have that all selected, we can just hit the delete button. You don't have to hit the delete button, but that's certainly one way to manipulate the building, is we can select part of it and just delete it. I'm going to hit Control Z. Control Z, obviously a function in pretty much all software. Sometimes it's Control Y for redo, or Control Shift Z for redo. I think Photoshop is Control Shift Z. I think it says it in the slides. But with this image, there is another way we can actually grab this background, and that is by using a mask. And so before I actually do that, let's actually bring in an image. So let's go to Google, and I was doing this at my other class, so I picked, I didn't want to do that. I picked this Halloween. I went in here, so you can find somewhat of a, a spooky sky or something like that that you want to grab. So let's go to this image. We're going to go to Open Image in New Tab, and once we have that image open, we can right-click and we can go to Save Image As, and I'm just going to save this into my folder. And sometimes you'll have some weird formats. So this has got some weird format. I don't know if this image will actually work, but we'll try it. And we'll use that same technique before. So I'm actually going to drag it in, but you could also copy and paste that image in. Actually, let's actually do the copy and paste. So let's go back to that image. Let's go to Control C. Now let's go to Control V and see if that works here. Doesn't like that image. I think it's because that image is a weird format. Let me try this again. Copy image. Yeah, it's because that image is a weird format. So there are some ways around this. If you find an image you really like, you can save it, change or convert that file. You could also use the snipping tool. Windows key Shift S is a cool Windows shortcut that you can actually bring up a screen capture. And so we can select this image like this. And it's actually going to automatically move that image to your copy paste. So now I can hit Control V and it should let me paste. Maybe it didn't work right. Oh, there he goes. Yeah, so that's kind of another cool way to bring in stuff if you don't. So again, the other thing you'll see now is I actually have two layers in here. So we have our George Brown layer and we have our image. And so we can actually move these layers up and down, which changes their priority, meaning the layers at the top are the layers that are most visible. The layers on the bottom are the least visible or behind those other layers. And so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to hit Control T. So this is the same as our transform, and I am selecting our background layer. So let's move this up here somewhere, and let's adjust the size so it's somewhere at the top here, like that. And once we're done, we'll hit Enter. We can actually go down here and we can rename this layer. So let's rename it to be, where's rename? Rename, let's call this Sky. And so I just showed your ability to delete the background. There actually is a more safe way to do that so that you don't have to lose the original image. We can use a tool what's called masking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide the sky. So there's this little eye button here, and I'm going to turn that off. And that's just going to turn off the sky or hide the sky. Very similar to the layers we were doing in SketchUp with the different tags. So it's kind of the same concept. Tags and layers are very similar. So with this, I want to go back with my magic wand again, and we're going to select the sky. And you'll notice it's doing some weird stuff right now, and it's actually because I have the wrong layer selected. So let's click our George Brown layer again. Let's use that button again, and then we'll hold the Shift button to grab this bottom part. And so here's where this part's going to be a little bit different. instead of deleting this, like I showed before, we're going to do this as a masking layer. And so we're going to click our sky layer that we have, and you can see that my selection is still there. We're going to click the sky layer, and we're going to go down here to this button right here, and it looks like a square with a darker circle in it. We're going to click that button, and because we have our sky layer clicked, it's gonna automatically adjust the size of our sky to be that selection that we made. So if I physically turn back on our sky image, you can see that it's actually cut out the rest of that sky. So it's only showing the sky where we use that magic wand. And so the cool thing about this is actually retained the sky. So you can see the sky image down here. It's actually square, but then the black part is showing what it cut out. And then when we turn on our George Brown layer, and again, having the sky as the top layer, you can see that we have our new kind of spooky sky on George Brown's Casa Loma campus. So that's kind of a way to start manipulating a photo. Now that we have our sky changed, let's do some other manipulations to this photo. So let's just say that we don't like the George Brown logo, and we want it to be orange or red or yellow or whatever. So that's something we can certainly do. Maybe we don't like all of these colors at the bottom of the George Brown logo. We want them all to be blue. That would be a really simple one. So we could use the magic wand. And again, we're going to select our George Brown layer, not our sky layer. And we can select this. And we could physically use our eyedropper tool. So if we go up here to the eyedropper tool, we can click the eyedropper tool, and we can click this blue. And what it's going to do is it's going to update our color up here on the right side to be that same blue. And mine was already selected like that because I did this in the previous class. But once we have that, over here on the side, you'll see this gradient tool. It's like a box right here. And we can click and hold this, and we can change this to the paint bucket. And we could paint this square blue. So we can get rid of that green square and make it blue. Let's just say we want to do something similar, though, with the masking, but a little bit different. Say, for example, we don't want to fully eliminate those colors. We just want to show, our client a different option, right? So what I can do here is down here at the bottom, there's a square with a little plus symbol in it. That's actually the new layer button. And so we can create a new blank layer. And what I can do is, instead of painting the blue in the image, I can paint it in this new layer. And so if we turn it off, you can see our green is still there, but it's now in our new layer that's on top. So you can use that selection and changing of layer technique to do a lot of stuff. You can kind of overlay different finishes. And so in our example in the slides, we talked about how they changed that brick, that wood veneer on the outside of the building to be some sort of stone veneer. And so that's certainly something that you can do. So, we can go back to our George Brown one, and we can grab more. We can go back to our magic wand, and we can grab more parts. So we can hold the shift button here, and we can magic wand this, hold the shift, and we can grab more of these colors. And then if we go back to our layer 1, we can paint this with the paint bucket blue. And again, we can kind of manipulate that look. So the next tool that I want to show is the lasso tool. And so if you go under here at the top, we have this selection brush. And it's a very useful tool, but probably more commonly you'll see the lasso tool. And so the lasso tool is basically just like a way we can select a very random selection like that. And say, for example, we selected too much, I can hold the Alt button. And if you see next to my lasso here, right in the corner there, when I hold the Alt button there, it will have a minus symbol let me see if I can see this better. I have a minus symbol, and if I hold the shift, it has a plus. So if I hold the minus here, I can deselect part of my selection. If I hold the plus will add to my selection, like that. So great way to add or remove. So I'm just gonna zoom in here a little bit farther on this N. If I wanted to make this N a different color, we can also use the polygonal selection tool, a polygonal lasso tool, and that's basically the same tool, but instead of randomly drawing a line, you can actually draw a very rectilinear straight line. And so when we go to this George Brown, we can, I'm going to hit Control D to deselect, or Escape, Control D, and then we can use the lasso tool to grab the face of this letter N here, and then we can paint this the same way. And when you get to like the second last one, you can double click to finish that. And again, you can use the Shift and Alt to add or remove from the selection. So let's just say down here, I didn't perfectly select the bottom of the N here. So we can use the lasso and, I'm going to hold the Shift button, and I'm just going to grab a little bit more of these pixels down here. And I'm going to hold the Alt and remove these 2 pixels here. So let's just zoom out again. So we have our N here. So again, selection and deselection. We could create a new layer here again, and we can paint this. And let's go up here. Let's select like a orange or something like that. And we can paint this to be orange. So you can edit that. We could also just paint this on the physical object as well, but sometimes painting it in a separate layer gives you control because you're not wrecking that original object that you're doing. So you can go obviously through this and keep doing that. Another way to do this would be, I'm just going to hit Control Z here. What we could do is we could actually let's create a masking layer here. So let's mask this like this, and let's paint this whole thing orange. Let's just see if it allows us to do that. Paint this whole thing orange. So what I did there, let me just do that again. So what I did there was I created a masking layer, but I have nothing in this object. And so if I select over here, right now I'm selecting the mask. If I select over here the image, I can paint this whole thing yellow. And so what I can do now is I can go in and update the mask and add more stuff to that mask. And further, it'll just kind of add more color to that. Let's see if this works here. I'm just going to do this quickly. And let's go to our mask, and I think, no, it's doubling my mask layer. So we might need to, yeah, I would say we probably need to edit the mask. I think there's a way to do that, but see if this something. So yeah, so you would want to redo that mask. That's another way to do that. But basically, we have this big orange box that we're masking on that letter N. So that's largely how to use a couple of these tools, and I think those are probably the most useful tools for our assignment. So I'm just going to pause this recording, and let's talk